Fourthly, we've been rushing decisions. Oh man, everything's an emergency if you come to a city council meeting. Everything's an emergency. It doesn't matter what it is. Everything's an emergency. It's got to be passed right now. Even if it's just, if we've never even read the legislation until we got there that night, it needs to be passed right now. Let me just pass it. It needs done, guys. Well, what do you think that leads to? Maybe some bad decisions. Yeah, maybe some bad decisions. Or what if I said, hey, you gotta go buy a house by tomorrow night. Debbie, you need to go buy a house by tomorrow night. Is she gonna make a good choice? No, she's not gonna make a good choice. The same thing happens in city government. MBIS. Who knows what MBIS is? MBIS, Municipal Building Inspection Solutions. Remember what we were talking about earlier about the building department? That's the company that we outsourced to. And it was supposed to save a lot of money. It was supposed to be wonderful. We were going to be tiptoeing through the daisies with rainbows and butterflies, and all of our fears were gone. It hasn't worked out that way. They rushed the process. Did any of you have a chance to say anything about it? No. Did any of you have a chance to look at it, even?
Is there a contract?
No. There is. It's up at the end of next year. So we've been rushing decisions. How many times have you been called by your council person and asked for input? How many times have you been emailed by your council person and told what's going on? How many times have you come to a meeting and they've said, hey, come on up, I'd like to hear what you have to say?
Oh, yeah.
How many times has that been said to you?
Especially us.
They don't even frankly want to hear me talk. Okay? But that's bad. That's bad. That's bad business. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, regarding the MBIS, last year on my birthday, I got a ticket for my grass. And my guy was coming out that day. They told me if I don't have it done that day, they were going to send somebody back. And all of a sudden a guy came up that he took off his magnetic sign and said he was hired by the county, by the city to come out and cut my lawn. And I said, oh no, I'll lay out here on every part of my property and make them run me over.
Well, that's an interesting situation. Maybe we talk about that afterward. But there have been a lot of difficulties, and as you're probably aware, poor folks who own rental properties in the city, I don't know if any of you do, there's a huge backlog to get a rental inspection because there's no employees left in the building department. And people are losing money. People like you and I are losing. You know what a month's rent is? $1,000, maybe more. It's gone. Why? Because the city is all in a shambles. Because the building department is almost ruined. So, lastly, appropriations chasing expenditures. When you make a budget at home, who makes a budget at home? Come on, raise your hand even if you don't, because you should. Frankly, my wife does. But somebody does. Somebody's got to. Whenever you make your budget, what do you start with? What do you start with? What's the first number you write down?
Income. How much you have?
Income. Okay. And then what do?
I do it backwards.
And then you start seeing how many expenditures you can fit into that, right?
Or you start listing your expenditures.
Or you start cutting them down.
And you list them by priorities.
Exactly.
I know how much I get
List them
each
by
month.
priorities. That's exactly right. Well, our appropriations here in Maple Heights chase the expenditures. This is what I finally came out and said in a public meeting, is that we don't do what you do in budgeting at home. We say, this is kind of what it would be like. If I were to go home and I would be writing down, I have, my car payment. Oh, that's $500, but you know what? Maybe I'll get like a discount from my bank. So maybe it'll only be $400. Yeah, maybe it'll only be $400. And I write that down. And then I say, well, I'm supposed to only get paid $30,000 this year, but maybe I'll get a raise. Maybe I'll get a 3% raise. So let's add that on there. Maybe I'll get a Christmas bonus. So let's add that on too. You see where I'm going with this? Wishful thinking. And what ends up driving the budgeting process are the expenditures. And we've been able to get away with it because remember, we started with $7 million in the bank. you'd be able to get away with it for a little while, spending more than comes in. You'll notice that in the past 2 years, the expenditures are significantly higher at the end of the year than they were supposed to be at the beginning. The budget that was passed, the appropriations is what they're called, that were passed in March are totally different than the appropriations that are passed at the end of the year in December. Why? Because they had a whole bunch of expenditures they didn't expect or couldn't control, and so they just raise it. Let's just appropriate more money. So they end up breaking the law in the process too. So, what I've shared with you tonight has been some numbers, right? Some numbers. We've looked at some numbers, some figures, some facts. But in my estimation, maybe in yours, you're starting to catch on that this isn't just a matter of numbers and figures and just having enough dollars to pay the expenditures. I would argue that there's some attitudes toward the way we do our accounting, the way we run our city government, that are actually leading to the bigger problems. That even if we had more money, that perhaps we wouldn't be any better off. Because you remember, at one point, we took out a $10.5 million loan. Or someone took it out on our behalf anyway. We all own a piece of that $10.5 million, and we will until 2030. So what attitude drove that is the question. Because now there's $1.2 million out of the bite taken out of our budget every year. What attitude caused that to happen? That's the question that I'm asking. And I wanted to pause here and kind of shift gears for the rest of this and start asking you for your input. What do you think, as we looked at all of what happened here and what happened here, what was actually happening behind the scenes that caused these things to come to pass? What was transpiring? What thoughts were being thought as these actions were being taken? What considerations were being made? What viewpoint, vantage point was whoever was making the decisions coming from? See what I'm saying? Get what I'm saying? Debbie, do you have a thought?
I was just thinking, they probably just wishful thinking, just hoping everything is going to get better. Not really having the facts or the information
If your
to
handler
lead
is
to a
gonna come
logical
tonight,
conclusion, but just hoping and thinking that somehow things would have.
I'll show you a concrete example of wishful thinking. Look in the 2013 column here. In the non-recurring revenues, you see a highlighted $300,000 in the 2013 column. That was supposed to be the sale of a billboard lease. Do you think that happened in 2013? It didn't happen. They were banking on it. They budgeted off of that $300,000 that had no guarantee whatsoever. But Mayor Lansky came in and he said, "Oh, it's going to happen. He was going to drive those people to make this contract and do this and that," and they put it in their revenue for that year, for last year, and it didn't come. And it didn't come. What was their excuse again? Oh well, it didn't work. Is that an excuse that we ought to accept from those who are charged with spending our money well? That's not an excuse, I don't think. But that's a concrete example right there in the numbers. You look at the 655,000 down there too. This is a different kind of example. This one actually came to pass. That is the railroad money. You guys remember anything about that? The railroad fund, what happened? Yeah, do you know what that money was for? What was that money for? Someone tell me. The residents in what way? Was it soundproof maybe?
Yeah, soundproof, give us windows and the walls.
Yeah, because of the noise from
So they
the
would
railroad.
vibrate too?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was supposed to be to upgrade the houses along the
Yeah,
railroad.
where do you think that $655,000
I'm sure
went?
Lansky found something else to do with
It
it.
went to the general fund.
That's right.
That money was set aside for something specific. And then they took that and they used it because they were like, "Oh, we need money real bad, we need money real bad." And you know what they did? They took the money of the people on Girard and wherever else That money was specifically set aside for them. It came from the railroad, from a fee that the railroad.
And it was the previous administration who negotiated a deal with the railroad, and it was this administration that do it.
Like I said, I haven't been here all that long.
Well, they negotiated with the previous administration about
Okay.
that.
Well, that money ended up not being spent on what it was supposed to be for. I'm not even sure that was legal, frankly. I'm being very frank with you. I don't know. But if it weren't, there are some people who wouldn't care, who frankly wouldn't care. And that's a very scary thing. That's why the state auditor is in here right now. It's because we've been making choices like this that are questionable. But that is a non-recurring revenue. That's a non-recurring, all these down here in this box are non-recurring revenues.
Right.
For the past 2 years, we've been trying to balance our budget with non-recurring revenues. You know what that's like at home? It would be like saying, oh man, we don't have enough money for food, so I got this, I got my camera, I'm gonna go sell my camera at the pawn shop. Are you starting to make good decisions at that point in time? That's like emergency decisions. You should maybe cut off the cable, or cut back on what kind of food you eat. Maybe hold off before you start pawning things, because you can't get those things back. But that's what has been done for a while now, is using these non-recurring revenues to pay recurring expenses. Naomi, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think what really happened, it just didn't really put a lot of thought. You know how you got a plush bank account. Even renovating City Hall. And some of the people were calling me saying that I've never worked anywhere, because I was a county employee of mine, where I got a chance to go to the furniture store and pick out the furniture that I wanted in my office. Okay? That was the kind of things that were going on. And who would ever outsource a building department when that was the only money-making department in the city? We were collecting those fees, but you're gonna send them out to someone else to do that. So I don't think much thought. They had money, and I remember when all this money was borrowed, they had money, and they just, you just go on that spending spree. You
Misappropriation of funds.
Well,
And then,
if you look at the total, if you total everything up, there was a $10.5 million loan. But then what happened to the $7 million, remember? $6 million of it's gone now. So it's $6 million plus $10.5 million. $16.5 million of non-recurring revenue was spent. So it was just spent on things. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to be thinking about.
Misappropriation of funds.
Ms. Mitchell was commenting along the lines of, it was like it was free money. We had a lot, so we just spent it. We know how tempting that is, don't we?
Yes, we do.
We all do know how tempting that is. I know how tempting that is. I'm a gadget guy, so when I have money, like, oh man, maybe I can get that next new gadget, right? But whenever, and I could do that when I was single, couldn't I? But whenever I became the head of a household, a wife, and now 5 kids, am I still, what would you look at me and say if I did that now? If I had a bunch of money, and I went out and I bought the next gadget, and suddenly I can't pay rent next month, what would you think of me? If I was single, you'd be like, okay, you're just kind of a goofball, come on, get your act together. But now,
You're completely irresponsible.
I'm irresponsible.
Exactly.
I'm irresponsible. So we have to be watching over those who have responsibility to act on our behalf. And if they aren't acting responsibly, then we should be looking into what we can do about it, because they're spending our money. Like, we all own a piece of this debt that we have now. And it's going to come from us. It's not going to come from somewhere else. It's going to come from each one of us paying our little share. So we have to be paying attention and making sure that people are being responsible in their decision making. What other comments and thoughts do we have as we've reflected over this as to what brought us to where we are now? We saw the external forces acting on us, $3 million gone. What would you think might have happened that caused it to actually crumble the way that it did? Any other thoughts on what might have happened? Hold on.
The administration blowing money that they didn't have. Just spending.
They
There's
wanted to
definitely a lot of
look-
spending, yeah.
He wanted to look
They
good,
wanted to look good.
yeah. I mean,
Well, that happens with
He's
a lot of
just spending what he
politicians.
didn't
It
have.
does happen.
huh?
It does happen with politicians where it's easy. We look at the federal government.
Oh, yeah.
We have extreme examples of it. You've heard of pork, pork barrel. You know, you stuff that thing as full as you can with whatever that you think you can get. And frankly, it's not working out at the federal level either. It doesn't work here. Okay, it doesn't work here. So we need to be thinking about this in a more sober way. It's not up in the sky somewhere, somebody spending somebody's money on something. It's the person who's supposed to be deciding how to spend my money on the things that he thinks I want. That's the way it's supposed to work. And that, for me, is what sticks
Actually,
out.
it's not what I want, what I need.
What I need, yeah.
Exactly.
So
That's
what
what
you think
sticks out
they
the
gonna
most
do
to
from
me.
now on?
What's that?
What do you think they gonna do about
The
it
same
now?
old thing until someone makes them stop.
And how do we do that?
But we don't have any money, so how they gonna keep spending?
That is a very strange
You
thing.
can't borrow
But
money.
when they're in fiscal watch or fiscal whatever, you know, aren't they
When it-
would be holding them down?
When we transition to fiscal emergency, which is very likely, there will be oversight from state government. There will be commissions set up with some members of city government, some members of the community, like business owners in the community, hopefully with some business sense. And members of the state government will be part of a commission that will be approving the decisions that we make as the government, as the council of Maple Heights. If you have watched any of the videos or come to the council meetings, you've seen that there is a real strong entrenchment in city government of we know what we're doing. Does it look, when you look at the facts, does it appear so?
No.
No, it does. If you just look at the facts, it does not appear so. So it's very scary when the facts, I laid them all out for you. I didn't make any of those up. These came straight from the government documents that everyone else had access to. Yet I'm one of the few who's coming to the conclusion that we don't know what we're doing. And if we continue back to the statement from the beginning, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. So, what do we do?
So let me understand. We're in fiscal watch and we're on the verge of fiscal emergency and they
Yes.
still have their blinders on? Or is it-
Mm-hmm.
Gotta come up with a plan.
Well, this is where we get more into the personality kind of stuff. This is where we get more into the personality kind of stuff. There are, frankly, many individuals in our city, in city government, on city council, who are scared to do
Oh,
anything.
yeah.
Yes,
They're scared to do anything.
They have a meeting beforehand where they're giving their lines.
Yeah, there are people who are scared to make decisions or to make a ruckus. And therefore, they're silent when they ought to speak up. Therefore, they go along when they ought to stop. That's where you get the personality side of it.
People are afraid of us or, I mean, are they afraid of the residents or?
No, I think there isn't much respect for residents
no.
in city government.
You're right.
You're
right.
Well, I could play you some video clips. I didn't get time to prepare these parts of it from city council meetings. Like, was it Tuesday? City council president was finished up the meeting Tuesday night, and there was a resident who had come with his friend or spouse, someone. And at the end of the meeting, she says, "Oh, do we get a chance to make comments?" She said, so second, this was first reading, so we'll get a chance to make comments tomorrow night on second reading? What do you think the council president said?
No.
You think she said no?
There's no second?
What do you think she said? There was a second meeting for the next night.
They weren't allowed in the meeting.
They were not allowed to make comments.
That's right.
But they were free to call their representative and make their comments to them. That is the attitude of our council president, and it's been proven multiple times, where this individual, council president, does not want to hear the comments of residents unless they're positive, unless they're nice, You can't make negative comments. That's simply what she has said on multiple occasions.
I would like to interject. I was very encouraged to hear that before we began this meeting, that we opened up in prayer. We all know that things are not normal in America now. And the result of problems in America stem greater than just what goes on here in Lakewood Heights. And as I was listening to the way you were saying, what are your thoughts? My thoughts, and I think about, because we opened up with prayer. One of the scriptures that stands out to me that is a problem across America comes from 2 Chronicles 7:14. And it says, if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. Part of the problem is the greed, the insatiable greed that America has about its own concern. And so it says, if my people which are called by my name would humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sins, and I will heal the land. The land is polluted. The land is polluted, not just Maple Heights, but the land itself. And God is cursing it because we who know better are not doing what we know to do. I'm a preacher. And surmise that from my perspective. I preached a message about hope several years ago, HOPE, and it was actually the front page of the Cleveland paper.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was on the front page of the Sunday paper, and it was. But I gave it an acronym. We all know what the word HOPE is, but I gave the HOPE an acronym, and in that acronym it said helping other people excel. I give about 5 different examples. Helping other people eat. Helping other people, I had different examples. I can't go them all right now, but, one of the things that, the Bible gives us clear evidence that these are not, this is what happens when we don't do things the right way. And again, it goes from our house right to the White House. It's not just, we're not an island. We're not an island. So, what do? We want to change the attitudes of people, and this is my first time here, and so I don't have all of the answers, but I would say this, is that if you want to change things, you have to start out by first getting on your knees and praying and asking the God of heaven to make a difference. Whereas, of course we have constituents and people in positions, but those people are flesh, but they're also spirit. And so, we have to be prayerful and patient that God will provide, He will meet the need. And it doesn't mean that we sit back and wait on Him. We have to sometimes we have to get involved. We have to take a stand if we want to see a difference. The Bible talks about it, Ecclesiastes, and I'm just about finished. It says, wisdom is the principal thing. Money is a defense. If you've got money, you can defend the issue. In other words, you got a way to pay your bill. Whatever, if you don't have money, then it's either going to get cut off or you're going to go into default. That's reality. Solomon was one of the wisest men that ever lived. And yet he was a king, and he understood that money is not the answer to all of our problems, but it allows you to meet the problem and be able to ascertain how to handle it. But you also need wisdom. You need wisdom to know what to do with that. And what we need to do is, so that we're not beating up people in positions, is that we need to pray for them. Because the Bible says life and death are in the power of the tongue. Okay, we're standing here, we're listening to you, and I'm not saying all what you're saying is true. I don't know, you may have a personal vendetta with someone. But the Bible says that life and death are in the power of your tongue. You want something to change? Speak life. Begin to pray for people, P-R-A-Y, and not P-R-E-Y. Because that is how you're going to make a difference. God is going to honor and move where He wants to move. Our world is in trouble. Our world is in trouble. Okay. People are in trouble. And people that we placed in positions and voted for, they've got to answer to that. But we've got to answer to how we treat them. The Bible tells us to pray for our leaders. That's what it says to do. That's what it says to do. And when you don't do that, you are being disobedient.